All right, welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shaunna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, why do we always look like we're like where the other one should be? Like, I look like I should be in Colorado right now. You look like you should be in the 97-degree weather here in Maryland, but here we are.
Well, it is 97 degrees here in Colorado.
Is it
So,
really?
yep.
Well, it's coming down. The sun's coming down now, so it's like 80 something. My computer is registering like 83 right now. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
we have very strange weather here. We're close to the Chesapeake Bay, so it's like, yeah, it's hot, but then it gets cool. You don't know what you're going to deal with from moment to moment. So, anyway.
Hmm. Yeah.
But anyhow, let's get into it for this week, Lisa. We have a good bit to talk about, and I have to be transparent and say, y'all, part of me was like, oh, there's so many things to talk about especially American society. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, I don't think I want 45, 47 to hijack our podcast. So
Hmm.
let's
Yep.
so
So
let's
let's
mix
move
it
on.
up. Yeah,
Yep.
let's mix it up. I mean, we're always going to revisit some foolishness that arises, obviously, but doesn't have to be every week or most weeks even. So we went in a different direction. So let me get into our word of the week and you'll see why. All right. So this week's word of the week is algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias. It also shows up if you were to do a search, it shows up as machine learning bias, which was quite interesting as I kind of started to look at a few things. But IBM has done a study, and a couple other folks have done studies on AI tools that exhibit disproportionate preference and bias for certain groups. Hello, ding, ding, ding. If artificial intelligence is built upon human intelligence, we know where it's coming from. I mean, it just
Yep. Yep.
makes so much sense, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
anyway, algorithmic bias is when AI systems produce unfair or inaccurate outcomes due to biased data, whether it's the algorithmic design itself or the assumptions that are embedded within the design that lead to certain discrimination against groups, specifically racial and gender groups, but we can go down the list in regard to reflecting the very same historical biases that we've seen in human intelligence to begin with. And so, Lisa, I thought this was really interesting because I always want to be a relatively early adopter to technology because I do like technology, frankly, out of selfishness. Anything that helps me to, of course, to work smarter, even though I already work hard, I like to work smart. But at the same time, I think we talked about this before with proceeding with caution, if you will. And this is one of the reasons why to proceed with caution, right? So, Lisa, I don't know if you've heard of this language specifically, but I am definite that you understand the concept and have heard of the concept previously.
Hmm. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, oh gosh, it's probably a couple of years ago now. I think you and I had done a piece where we Googled a
yeah.
like a particular I don't know, like Latinx woman or something, and just to see all of the images that it brought up, right? And we had
Yeah.
talked about it. So I don't think at that time it was known or understood kind of under the title of algorithmic bias, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's definitely a piece of it. Obviously what you're sharing here is that it's bigger than that. um
Mm-hmm.
but it's taken in all of the stuff on the interwebs, and then what do you expect? To your point, what do you expect? Yeah.
Yeah, it's, and I remember even some of this conversation coming up when I was working with an organization that primarily did coaching and really was staunch about their organizational values of being sure that coaching was both ethically responsible, but also identity responsive, meaning that, obviously, if you can match people with similar identities or lived experiences, then do so. And then, given that coaching style, what would that mean given that the coaching industry was moving towards AI tools for coaching? I'm like, well, goodness, if we already have bias in coaching as it is, then it's bound to replicate itself. And we haven't even, course corrected when it comes to coaching bias. So, proceed with caution. Let me just keep saying it that way. Proceed with caution.
Yeah, but I like that you've introduced this kind of name or title for this phenomenon, right? Because I think that sometimes we think about
Yeah.
computers and we think of them as objective, right? Like
Mm.
they're not humans. They don't have emotions per se. They're machines, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think we can, to your point, miss
Hmm.
that piece. So I think it's good that you're bringing this up and giving it a name and something we can look for.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's, it's gonna keep coming up. So pay attention to it. I am not one to say run for the hills when it comes to AI, but what I am saying is, again, proceed with caution.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that it's not going anywhere, but at the same time, neither is bias going anywhere. And so, how
Right.
can we, if this is going to be yet another language, just like social media became another language for a lot of folks in the world, if AI is going to be yet another language for folks in the world, how can we proceed with caution as we learn and use that language, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
got a ways to go, but tread lightly, my friends. That's what I'm saying. Oh, all right. Well, let's get into phase one. All right, y'all. Well, a few weeks ago, Lisa, let me tell you how I found out some news here. A few weeks ago, I was walking around doing some retail therapy in one of my favorite stores. And one of my friends, this was like midday, in between lots of work. One of my friends sent me a text as I was shopping around and said, "Hey, I think you need to sit down. I have something to tell you." And I'm thinking, now this is one of my good friends that I carry on, I'm light with, we're fun, we have great sense of humor. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking it's going to be something humorous that comes on the back end of what
Okay.
you said, right? So it's girl, you need to sit down for this one, and it's going to be some jokey joke that comes across my phone. And I receive the text message that is from CNN specifically, and then there were a couple of more that came after that that said, um, I would suggest a lot of us, our fictional big brother, Malcolm Jamal Warner, unfortunately passed as a result of officially asphyxiation, drowning in a very tough current off the coast of Costa Rica. And my friend was right. I needed to sit down to hear this information. And Lisa, it was a very curious feeling to me because I'm thinking, okay, all right, let me stop and reflect a little bit. Am I grieving Malcolm Jamal Warner as a person? Am I grieving the characters that he played that influenced
Mm-hmm.
my life in many ways? Am I grieving, his family, his wife, his daughter? What am I feeling right now? Because this is a human being that I have never met once. It kind of feels like when the world started grieving over Kobe Bryant or pick whatever
Right.
star
Mm-hmm.
that people will grieve over. Not to say that we don't value human life, obviously we do, but to grieve, I mean, people were like sobbing over celebrities as if they had met and knew each other well. And I had to stop and think about it. I'm like, well, yeah, we did know his characters well, and they entered our homes in such a way that it changed our lives. Or, even when society molds around a show and a character and an actor. Like, I don't know about how this went while you were still in the UK, Lisa, but in the United States on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, shut it down. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if it's summertime and you're playing outside and riding your bikes. You're walking in the house at 7:59 to see the Cosby Show, all right? And of course, that's not the limits of his genius and expertise as an artist. But yeah, I think we're legitimately grieving the death of someone who truly, yes, was a public figure. But Lisa, I started thinking about what would my thought patterns be, or what would my lived experience be had I not been exposed to a Malcolm Jamal Warner in a role
Mm-hmm.
in this type of character. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to imagine life having not experienced that. So, Lisa, I don't know about your experience with Malcolm Jamal Warner and his entire body of work, but a lot of us start with Theo Huxtable. Of course, he acted before that as a child actor around 9 years old or so. but he has a huge body of work. But how has his passing, and more importantly his living, how has that affected you as well? Because I know Cosby Show was your thing too.
Yeah, I mean, I loved The Cosby Show. I definitely watched it. I couldn't tell you when it was on or even how many seasons it ran for, but I do remember Theo. I thought he was hilarious. I really liked why I loved all the characters. Definitely a favorite show growing up. So it was pretty, I'm sure the impact on me is very different than it is for you. I mean, I am sad at the um randomness of it, I guess, as would be true for probably there are many folks who have lost loved ones due to drowning or riptides and such. And so you just think about um how sudden and unexpected that is. And so I think that is what makes me really sad. And he was still so young, um, early 50s, and obviously had a family, but had probably a ton more to give the world, right? Um, so that feels really difficult, and I feel that way a lot of times when there are famous people who I'm familiar with who die kind of unnecessarily. Not that that sounds weird, like not that there's a necessary death, but like the people who are taken too soon, right? And it was perhaps preventable, and it was just like shitty
Yeah.
luck, or
Yeah.
just bad timing or wrong place, wrong, all that stuff. I find that to be really
Mm-hmm.
difficult to process, but I certainly grew up with him, um
Yeah.
a
Mm-hmm.
lot of you and I have talked offline about a lot of the Cosby Show
Yeah.
narratives and storylines likely went over my head as a white British person. So there's probably a whole bunch
Yeah.
of nuance I completely missed. um that you
Mm-hmm.
have a much kind of richer um appreciation for the show growing up in the
Mm.
United States specifically, but because it was about a black family, right? And they were
Mm-hmm.
so infrequently represented in positive ways on television.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of my initial thoughts around it.
Yeah, and what kind of takes me back too is that, frankly, Lisa, I wasn't, put it this way, watching, and I think a lot of people have experienced this, is that you may have experienced something as a kid, and then you go back and experience it again as an adult, and you're like, hold up, wait a minute. Like there were so many layers to the experience of educating the general public that watched the Cosby Show specifically, that it's hard to articulate. It's really, because when I go back and think about the number of celebrities that were on that show with Malcolm Jamal Warner that I didn't even realize were celebrities at the time when I was a kid, but I went back and I'm like, oh wow! So Dizzy Gillespie is just walking through the
Mm,
house as Rudy, and as Rudy's friend and Vanessa's clarinet teacher. Like, are you serious right now? Or, let's just swing by and see Lena Horne behind,
mm,
backstage. So, some of that happening, and frankly, when it comes to specifically Theo's character, I think. Being one of five, the only boy of five, some of the things that I reflect on that now I'm still very adamant about exposing my boys to knowing and understanding, even though obviously, look how many decades we are later, but some of those
yeah,
lessons are still
yeah.
very strong. Like when Theo discovered that he had, at that time, called a learning disability. I believe he was dyslexic, and discovering it. And I remember laughing at him saying, I got to take this test to see if I'm dyslexic. And it was kind of explained to him, you really kind of don't want to pass this test. And he said, well, Dad, I'll do my best to let you down, type of thing. Right. Well, Trey watched that same episode and went to have his testing. And he said, hey, I'm going to do my best to fail, Mom. I know I can fail it. I know it. Now, it wouldn't matter either way. We're going to provide resources regardless. But just
Hmm.
that it normalized a lived experience that a lot of Black families were not aware of, other families also were not aware of. And I think Theo brought so much life to that in yes, a comical way, but still a way, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
trying to navigate your young male masculinity in a house of four sisters. That's interesting. Like, there's just so many layers to it. And so I recently watched it was like an interview of his where I forget who was asking him, but they were asking them kind of like a list of quick fire questions. And they asked him, what's one thing that you wish you could be better at? And the first thing he said without, a pause at all was, I wish I was better at acting. Now the rest of the
Mm.
world is like, what the hell are you talking? You've been on countless shows since you have a huge body of work. What are you talking about? But I think that speaks to the lack of a big ego,
Mm-hmm.
humility, growth mindset, all these wonderful things that you want really every human being to have these characteristics. Um, so, getting to through and beyond Theo as the character, like if you mention, like, let's say I'm talking to a non-white family and I say Malcolm Jamal Warner passed, they'd be kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure who that is. Theo died, fool. Then they would be like, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about, right? And so his character was iconic, but it didn't just stop there. And some of the things I've been discovering since he passed, I think, we have to wrestle with both the grief of someone we've never met,
Mm-hmm.
passing, and at the same time, what can we glean from who they are? Um, and so I think there's just a lot of lessons that can come from him as an individual, his characters, plural, and also the isn't it interesting how, like with Theo and the Cosby Show and everything surrounding the culture of the Cosby Show, how it's almost like, again, putting the medicine in the applesauce. All the different things that we learned, like every episode was a life lesson, but we didn't even
Mm-hmm.
realize it was a life lesson because it was so entertaining. It was so humorous. You got people walking around talking about, I'm Black and I'm first generation going to college. That became normalized due to the bridge between the Cosby Show and a different world. So all of that, you look back, like I guarantee you, any Black person during a certain generation, my generation, maybe a little bit older, would say, mm, college might have been a suggestion, maybe, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
real until I watched A Different World and Cosby Show. And, you know, so I think, we have to stop and pause and think about how media and that form of art as a sitcom has shaped people's lives in ways that they can't unsee it, they can't unexperience it, they can't really imagine their life being what it is right now based off of what they experienced previously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do
So,
you think I don't know this. Do,
mhm.
do you know or can you guess at an educated guess at the viewership of the Cosby Show and TV shows, this the spin-offs like A Different World and such in terms of racial
Oh,
breakdown? Like, do you know like
I
overall
don't
how
know.
many millions of people watched it and then how that broke down? Um
Oh, that's such a good question. That's a good question. Tell me your thought process behind that.
well, I'm just wondering about like how meaningful the show was based on your racial identity because of representation in Hollywood, in TV,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
and then how
Mhm.
that then fast forward to now and how
Mhm.
the degree to which that show
Mhm.
specifically, right? Not necessarily anything that Malcolm Jamal-Warner has done since, but because of the timing of that show,
Yeah.
like how that is landing differently, like
Oh,
just in the microcosm of you and I. Obviously I didn't grow up in the US, so it is a little different, but like it's
yeah.
landing differently
Yeah.
for me as a white person than it is for
Mhm.
you, right? But I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious how that are
Mm.
we a good litmus test or like
Uh,
it or of how it might be landing kind of writ large based on the importance of the Cosby Show at the time that it was released, and to your point about college and about
ooh, yes, yes.
surfacing learning
Mhm.
disabilities in a way that had never been done before, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, look, I did a quick search, and what I did find, I didn't find much broken down by demographic, but what I did find was that more than 24.7 million viewers, um, for the premiere and averaged about 16 million viewers during the course of each season.
Mm.
So 16 million people is not small. And what I also pulled up too is exactly what you were mentioning before too, around how the let's say it was widely watched across racial lines, but most notably resonated with Black viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, given that, I think what's interesting though is that I know this is stemming away from Malcolm Jamal, but there was also a bifurcated experience. I'm sure we're not a great litmus test for it, because there was a bifurcated experience too amongst Black people broadly around those that were excited and entertained and
Mm-hmm.
saw the Cosby family, or the Huxtable, excuse me, family, as a family to aspire to.
Okay.
And at the same time, you had other folks within the Black community that were like, that's just entertainment. That's not realistic. I mean, who do you know that has a mom that's an attorney and a dad that's a doctor, and they live in a huge brownstone that can fit 5 kids comfortably, and da, 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 da. Like,
Okay.
there was some skepticism because it was showing, to your point, it was showing a lens into a family dynamic that obviously wasn't seen,
Mm-hmm.
on television or a lot of movies and so forth. So it wasn't seen in entertainment. And a lot of folks that come from various communities that haven't even seen one family even close to that modicum of a Black family, it was a stretch for them. But this is where, Lisa, I know I've harped on this many times before on this podcast, but the Cosby Show itself could lend itself to a lot of the conversation we had before about freedom dreaming amongst Black people. That, are you even able to envision a life, a family, a situation, even just one slice? Like, every single character on the Cosby Show could have been a freedom dream for a Black person, bless you, depending on what identity function you're choosing. Like, I want to be the kid like Theo that has a learning disability but still graduates from NYU. I want that type of thing. Um, I would suggest that there's always a situation like that. Like, Lisa, I know you also love Blackish as well, and there are
Yeah.
still some folks that
Yeah.
feel bifurcated about that, where it's like, is that realistic? You got a mama
Mm.
named Rainbow that's a doctor, and like, really. Um, some of us say, yeah, really, thank you for stretching my brain to think that
Mm-hmm.
far. Or other people that are like, yeah, that's pretty similar to my experience. Or people that are like, that is straight up fiction, and it will never be my reality. Nor is it something I want to strive for, type of thing. So, again, this should be common sense, but I'm going to say it. It's not going to be a monolith either way, Lisa.
Right.
It's
Right.
just not. It's not a monolith for non-Black people. It's not going to be a monolith amongst Black people. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is really interesting for me, obviously being a teenager in Britain, no idea of that nuance or how that might
Uh-huh.
not be representative. I think I just was like, oh, this is what America is like. Like, it didn't even cross my mind that that would not be an accurate representation of Americans, right? Like, I mean, obviously I feel differently now in
Mm-hmm.
terms of everything that I've learned, but like then I was just like, this is America. It's great. I love it. They're so fun.
Exactly.
Like, yeah,
Exactly.
I want to be friends with Americans.
Well, and to your point though, I've had, especially in a higher ed setting, exactly to your point, students that would come to whatever college or university where I was working or teaching at, and they may come from, whether they're international students, or let's say they're students from out west where there are very few African Americans there, and they come to where I was. Obviously, I've always been on the East Coast with anything I've done in higher ed and teaching formally. They come to the East Coast where there's plenty of Black folks here, and they're, that type of thing. And they're like, oh my God, I'm expecting everybody to be the Cosbys. Like, every Black person's mom is an attorney and every Black person's dad is a doctor, and da da da. No, baby, that's not how it is. We would love for it to be that way, but it's not. Um, and at the same time, it's a catch-22, right? Because it's like, no, that's not the reality, but yes, it's possible. Thank you,
Yeah,
Cosby
which
Show,
is
for
that
showing
yeah,
us
the
that.
freedom dreaming. Yeah, I think that's such an important point, right? Like, without that representation on screen, to
Mm-hmm.
your earlier point in this conversation, then many people might have
Yeah.
been like, college isn't really a thing, right? Like,
Oh, for
and
sure.
and that's, so it's
For
powerful in that
sure.
way, even just being one TV show.
Absolutely. Or remember, you know, Sandra went to law school, and then, even that is like, hold up, wait a minute. You've got a firstborn child that's going to law school. The mom's an attorney. The daughter's husband is going to law school too. Like, this is not Black people's experience. What are you talking about right now? Just unconscionable, uh, calling folks to think differently, whatever your reality is. Like, once I saw a different world, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. I'm going to set up my room exactly like they had their dorm set up. I'm going to do all that. I'm going to put the posters up. My friends are going to come barging in my room, and it's going to be great. That was
Right.
enough to get me through high school right there. Okay. Just the
Yeah.
excitement of thinking about that was enough to get me through high school here. So, anyway, I just wanted to lift up Malcolm Jamal Warner and his very large presence in the, how can I say, the Cosby Show universe that made people think differently.
Yeah.
Made people think differently. So, and as most people know that follow me, my favorite episode is Gordon Gartrell, which I love, where Denise made him this hideous shirt and he wore it like it was the best thing ever. To me, I just, there are going to be memories where you have to kind of laugh to keep from crying, and you're crying and you're laughing at the same time. I'm sure as we watch watch episodes and reruns, we'll feel that way whenever we see Malcolm Jamal Warner's face. So wanted to
Yeah.
just remember all the good memories that he gave us, and of course, big condolences to everyone who knew him, of course. So, all right, Lisa, let's get into phase 2.
All right. So we're going to circle back to the concept of the week, although that was not intended to play out that
That's
way.
right.
So,
Yeah.
we're heading into the start of school, whether that's K through 12 or universities, right? We're in August. And I've been grappling with this a little bit about, as a professor, as a teacher, how to engage with, confront, discuss with students the use of AI, like a ChatGPT or a Copilot, Gemini, etc., in the production of their papers, right? And it's coming up more and more, and thus far I've buried my head in the sand a little bit, but I feel like I can't do that. And what's interesting about this is, a lot of people are going into a lot of debt to get either an undergraduate or a graduate degree, and to then use AI to respond to discussion prompts online or to write papers feels a little bit like a waste of money, right? Like, you're spending all this money, you're going to go into all this debt, and you're not even doing the work. And what's interesting is, not too long ago, there was an MIT a study. It's one single study. So I do want to underscore that it is one study, had about 50 something people in it. So it is certainly isn't necessarily generalizable. I'm sure there'll be more that come, but this MIT study had a group of 18 to 39-year-olds and broken into 3 groups. And one of the groups got to write papers or respond to prompts using ChatGPT. And what they found was that ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioral levels. Over the course of several months, ChatGPT users got lazier with each subsequent essay, often resorting to copy and paste by the end of the study. So there is at least in this study, some evidence to support that the more you engage with ChatGPT or its siblings, the less able you are to think critically, to analyze data, to write effectively. And it's actually like at the neural, like at the brain level. Like, I think they had like little sticky things on people's heads and stuff to like track it.
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
so that's one thing I wanted to just put out there. And then the second thing I wanted to put out there is that this professor student divide. So there was a piece in the New York
Yeah.
Times and other outlets a few weeks ago related to a student that's asking for their money back because they discovered that their professor was using ChatGPT to construct lecture notes and tools for the lecture that they had then uploaded into Canvas, which is the online learning management system. And there were like errors in it, right? And photographs that had like 2 hands or 4 hands or something. And so this student started to identify, well, hey, the syllabus says I can't use AI for anything because it's considered academic dishonesty, and that's a problem. But hey, my
Wow.
professor
Wow.
at
Wow. Wow.
Northeastern, I think. So I think is a private, expensive university, is
Mm-hmm.
doing all this stuff. So that feels really hypocritical. Give me my $8,000 back for this class, please.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which was denied. That didn't happen. But it does raise some interesting issues around how do I engage with students to help them understand that it is not useful for them to rely on this to write their papers, to summarize their readings, because then they're not learning anything. And it could actually have this deleterious effect on their ability to engage their brain, while at the same time
Yeah.
also recognizing that AI can be a useful instructional tool in terms of getting ideas for classroom activities or
Yeah.
identifying
Yeah.
patterns in documents or materials, like in a way
Yeah.
that can be helpful. So that's just a lot that I threw at you, Shaunna, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are around it all.
Oh, well, I always wonder whether should well, I got a lot of thoughts running through my brain. But my first thought is with I wish that, especially when it comes to education, I wish it was more of a cosmetic tool rather than an actual
Mm,
tool. You know what I mean?
okay.
So for
Yeah.
example, let's keep it real. Let's be completely transparent. Lisa, you and I, we can talk about this right now as it relates to this podcast right now. For years, I'm happy to do it. For years, you and I have written the show notes for these podcasts to make sure people are
Mm-hmm.
aware and they're excited about whatever topic we're talking about. We have written every single word. We have edited for each other, etc. We've done that for years. Now, we literally can take our production notes, which we also came up with,
Mm-hmm.
upload those production notes into whatever AI function, whatever AI tool we want to use, and it spits out show notes based on our instruction, but yet we still also edit it. We don't just throw it out there without
Right.
laying our
Yeah.
own editing onto what AI produces. That makes sense to me because it
Mm-hmm.
is ours originally. And we're really just saying, AI, we need you to make sure that this cosmetically is good. But the meat of it is fantastic. And we know that because we did it ourselves, right? The converse ends up happening, which is AI, write the show notes about artificial intelligence bias and Malcolm Jamal warning. And then it spits out some crap that's really not necessarily crap, but it's not lending itself to critical thinking of what we're
Mm,
actually producing as content for our listeners. And then it's completely off base. This is what we find happening with students. Now, I'm not completely 100% blaming students for that because I have also been on the other side of that professor's lectern and have dealt with faculty members that have been so freaking resistant to any type of learning technology that
mm-hmm.
because there's been this abandonment of, oh, let's paint it as bad and ignore it and it'll go away. And so now you have students that have not been taught, coached, or mentored as to how to use AI as a cosmetic tool rather
Mm-hmm.
than the tool.
Yeah.
And so part of me, and I know that comes from, I'm very much a Paulo Freire type educator, if you will. So I'm very rarely, if ever, blaming students for misunderstanding things out the rip, you know, out the gate. I take onus as faculty, negligent
Mm-hmm.
faculty members for not showing students how to use things well
Mm-hmm.
because it can be useful. And I've seen a very small slice of faculty across the country that were early adopters and embraced AI, and they're using it as a tool so that students don't have to, hide their phone underneath the desk, hide their phone while they're trying to look up something or write something real quick. Don't don't create a space where students end up abusing the tool because you never taught them how to use it. We have teaching and learning centers at colleges and universities for a reason. I've worked with faculty members that either didn't even know the teaching and learning center even existed, and if they did know it existed, they did not frequent it because they thought they knew everything. And Lisa, you and I both know, unless you are in a college of education getting your master's or your PhD, whatever discipline you're in, they do not teach you how to teach.
Right, right.
Dr. Ingerfield may be a prolific Nobel Prize winning economist, but that doesn't mean that she could teach anybody what she knows, because that wasn't what she was taught during her terminal degree. She was taught the understanding of economics or whatever field it may be, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And so the avoidance of AI, in my opinion, the avoidance of AI has now made it the enemy, because faculty are like, no, don't use it. Like that was the problem in the case with the student, was that in the syllabus, the professor told the student they couldn't use it, but the professor turned around and used it and
Yeah.
was very lackadaisical with how they used it, making mistakes,
Right.
leaving notes, clearly did not review the notes that they asked
No,
for AI
no.
to create. And so not only have you not taught your students how to use it well, but you haven't used it well. So what kind of modeling are we having here? Raggedy ass teaching, Lisa. That's raggedy.
Yeah, and I think
Inappropriate.
universities at writ large have been pretty slow to develop policies around this. I don't know what this looks like at the K-12 level, but there isn't really a
Mm-hmm.
clear policy at my institution. And other than if you use ChatGPT or its siblings, you have to cite it, right?
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
you can't write an entire paper using ChatGPT, because then you would essentially be citing the entire paper, right? None of it's your work. But if you
That's right. That's right.
pull a sentence or two that ChatGPT has
Yeah.
written, then you have to cite it like you would if you were taking something from a book. That's about as far as it
Mm-hmm.
goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but so here's another layer that I think that I've been kind of banging around in my head a little bit, because I had a professor ask me what the regulations were around the use of AI, because she suspected that one of the students had been responding to these online discussion prompts using AI because it felt detached. It didn't really include personal experience. It was just, she just said it kind of had all the hallmarks of an AI response. However, you can't really prove that, right? Like you can't drop it into Google and Google goes out and then finds where that generated response sits, right? That's not, you just can't do that. So these like systems that, you know, profess to catch AI just aren't very good, and now you don't have these documents that you're essentially pulling from. So that's one problem. The second problem is, I wonder whether, because it is so difficult to discern whether or not the student used AI, whether professors at all levels of education are going to start falling back on stereotypes about a student's intellectual ability and say, oh, this feels like AI, and so we're going to have like a lot of false positives. And the students who are going to be most impacted are students of color, low income students, girls, women, and students with disabilities, right? Because there's going to be like this higher unspoken belief that they're just not as competent. So
Yeah.
therefore,
Yeah.
you know, and I haven't
Mm-hmm.
actually seen a lot about that. Like I did a little
Mm-hmm.
search to see if I could see whether that was happening, and
Mm.
that's a real concern, right?
Yeah. And the in a college setting, I'm not sure with in K through 12, but student conduct, I would be interested to see, based off of all my friends who are student conduct folks, are they seeing an uptick in accusations of plagiarism through student conduct as a result of AI or not? And
Mm-hmm.
then break that down by demographics,
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
said. That's where we're
yeah,
going. I would be interested to see that, because that's frankly where it would go. I mean, even traditional understandings of plagiarism would go through that process as well. So,
yeah.
whether it's honor code or student conduct, possibly a mix of both. Yeah, that's where that would go. So, look, at the next higher ed conference, I guarantee you there's going to be something good coming of that in regards to giving some concrete data points around what's going on with reporting. So, but
Yeah,
again,
because if
but
you
I'm I'm cyclical on it because I'm
Mm-hmm.
still like, okay, well, I have a hard time allowing student conduct or an honor code to dictate the outcomes of a student because like we've literally had some students come in that did not do a lot of writing in their high school experience that weren't really clear on what plagiarism was.
Yeah, yep, definitely seen that. Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, there's a couple in master's programs that still did not understand quite clearly what plagiarism was.
Oh,
So
100%.
that's why I'm like, if we don't take the time to teach them, then they won't know.
Yeah, and it goes beyond, I think the teaching of plagiarism in particular, whether you're pulling from AI or somewhere else, is
Mhm.
misses the mark a lot of the time because it's like you're stealing, you're taking someone else's work, which is true. But if we frame it more of an integrity issue
Academic
and
integrity. Yep. Yep.
yeah, like this is you're using someone else's words and passing them off as your own. What does that say about you? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how might that impact an employer who might want to employ you? Or if you're I say this with human service and
Mm-hmm.
social work students all the time. You're writing a memo to the court that is the difference between someone keeping their children and not keeping their children, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And you
Right.
don't know how to write, or you take information that's not your own, or goodness knows you use AI for that, right? Like that feels
Mm-hmm.
like the stakes are pretty damn high, whereas the stakes on you
Yeah.
and I now show notes feel very low comparatively.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I do think
Yeah.
I think that you're right that there is the responsibilities on the professor, and I do think we will start to see those statistics trickle out if people are even thinking about it. I mean, like
Yeah. Yeah.
well, Shaunna is, Shaunna struggles, so she probably did use AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lisa struggles, but I don't think Lisa probably used AI.
Right. There you go. Yes, yes, yes.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and like you said, some of the tools that they've attempted to use really haven't been all that successful, like the early warning systems and other things
Mm-hmm.
that haven't really helped. It's like, yeah. Like I think about, so for example, Trey uses Grammarly for some of his work when he's writing papers for middle school, now going into high school. Well, Grammarly is pretty useful, really useless if you haven't written something to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's not like, oh, we'll write it for you, AI. It is, what did you write? And let's clean it up. It's that cosmetic piece
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, okay, this is how we use it, son. We use it in such a way that you've done the thinking. Let's push forward. Or I don't know, maybe I wish I had some visual way to depict it, but in my brain, it's very much like an arc of use. Like there might be some people that are like, okay, if you use it at all, I'm just jumping on to get an idea or think about a title for a workshop that I'm going to do, but I've done everything else myself. So you have those people that are
Mm-hmm.
barely dipping their toe in the water of AI, and then you got people all the way to the other extreme that wrote, half a master's thesis using
Right.
AI.
Right.
If we don't, and I would suggest, interesting, I don't know much about K through 12 on this, but I know there have been some emerging universities that have started to at least be clearer on what their stance is. Like at least
Okay.
Carnegie Mellon was like, hey, we don't care. We whatever. You're still going to have to prove your understanding and knowledge of the topic anyway. So I don't care if you wrote 5 papers that were AI generated. If at the end of the semester we have an in-class exam and you have to write it right there on the spot, we'll know whether you were using AI all semester or not. Okay, that's a pretty liberal, broad approach to it. There's others where it's like, here's template language for faculty to use in their syllabi as to
Mm,
what's acceptable or what or not broadly across the academic department, academic school, or the larger university. So even that, there's an arc to universities approaching it or not. They may be ostriches with their heads in the sand saying, let's just avoid it for as long as we can. Oh, fine. Like the same thing they did with social media. Let's avoid writing a policy about student organizations using social media until we have to. Reactive rather than proactive.
I mean, the bigger picture for me feels cataclysmic in a way, because I couple this with the recent
Uh-huh.
changes in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act related to student loans and the
Yeah.
ways in which those student loan options are being restricted. And there are caps. There are caps now for
Yes.
undergraduate and graduate education. So if you are saying that
Mm-hmm.
you can only borrow this much, but to get a graduate degree, you need more than that, then you're not going to be able to go, right? And so we are
That's it.
then creating an environment where less and less people of middle income and down are going to be able to attend college,
Mm-hmm.
either at the undergraduate or graduate level. And so that group of
Mm-hmm.
people are going to get richer and richer in terms of those
Mm-hmm.
folks being able to afford it. And then with that, this like proliferation of the use of AI, so we further lose the ability to critically think and to engage substantively and to write in our own words. And so you
Yes,
end up
yes,
just
yes,
having
yes.
this like degradation, this deterioration of across the board, not even education from a degree standpoint, but education from an ability to engage with material that's difficult and hard and see the nuance and see
Yes.
the gray and critically think. That just feels like with these two things together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pretty, yeah, cataclysmic.
And in addition to the constant restraint, let's go back to K through 12, which we didn't really get to as much. In addition to the same song we've been singing for a very long time, Lisa, about the lack of critical thinking on a K through 12
Yeah,
level,
yeah, yeah.
because the systems have been built to relatively hamstring teachers
Mm-hmm.
not to have time to allow students to grapple with hard
Right.
topics and discussions.
Yeah.
And so the system it's going to have to be countercultural in order to continue to hold tightly onto critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because you now have an ecosystem that's getting stronger and stronger
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work against critical thinking. Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
just easier for me to put this in AI and see what it spits out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just easier. And so, I think the the thing that we should do most often, which we usually don't do, is being proactive about the usage of it. I mean, like this sounds crazy, Lisa. I know it sounds crazy, but it kind of reminds me of all the conversations about like kids, teenagers, young adults, and abstinence. Like if we avoid it and tell them to leave it alone, they will.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
We know the data does not support none of that bullshit at all. And
Yeah.
I feel like we're treating AI the same way,
Yeah.
is that, oh,
Yeah.
well, if we tell them not to use it and it's bad and it's anti-education, then they won't.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Using
Of
it every
course.
day,
Yeah. Yeah.
every day at
Yeah.
many levels.
For sure. Well, on
So
that uplifting note, let's call it a day.
I know, right? I hate sounding anti-AI because I'm learning. And Lisa, you and I both know we could go on and on about the ways in which we've discovered the great silver
Yeah.
linings of using
Yeah.
AI for certain things that we need to do in our functions as educators and consultants. And at the same time, here we go again. Proceed with
Yep.
caution,
Proceed with
Lisa.
caution. Yeah.
Proceed with caution. That's what I'm saying. All right, y'all. Well, we are at the end of yet another episode. Thank you for joining us once again. Please know that we are well past 200 episodes. So if you liked today's episode, please don't forget that you can find us on our website, unfazedpodcast.com. Find all of our episodes there. You can find us on every social media platform, including your normal podcast apps that you may use as Unfazed Unedited. And of course, please share us with your folks. Share, like, subscribe, leave a review. But make sure that, especially if there are topics that pique your interest, to share them with friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So, Lisa, until next week.
All right. See you next week, everyone.